This is Gemara Nedarim Daf Samoch Test. Today's learning, the learning for the month of Teves has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf as Schos Ili Neshama, Faryele ben Rav Yaakov B'Siyata Dishmaya. The schos of the entire Chabura as we trudge through this bit of a difficult parak, perhaps short on words but large in Yesodais, difficult concepts. Deep Gemara should bring Faryele ben Rav Yaakov to an higher place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. So we're holding on Daf Samach Tes Amid Aleph, and we are 5 lines down, and says the Gemara Ba'i Rava. And today's shir really is going to be a bunch of Ba'is, a bunch of Shilas. So Ba'i Rava, to start off the day, asks Rava, Yesh She'ila Behekim or Ein She'ila Behekim. This is a idea that we started mentioning the other day, that Hakama means to confirm, to verify the Neder. So asks Rava, once a Neder is verified, is confirmed, can it be undone? Can you do she'ilah? Can you ask the Chachamim, the Bezdin, to undo the Hakama, the verification, or not? And if you're going to tell me that you could, that there is such an entity of she'ilah, when it comes to Hakama, yesh she'ilah behafer, or ain't she'ilah behafer. So in a similar vein, what if one is mefer a neder? He annuls it. Can you undo the annulling? Which of course is a little bit interesting, because the whole concept of hafara is undoing the neder. So now we want to know, can you undo that which you undid the neder or not? So two-pronged shaila by Rava to start off the day. Does Hakama, does verification and confirmation have the concept of she'ilah or not? And if you're going to tell me yes, what about hafara? So Tashema says the Gemara 5 lines from the bottom, Damar Rav Yochanan, Nish'alim ala hakim, ve'ein nish'alim ala hefer. So we have a Bever Shememra from Rav Yochanan that teaches us explicitly, Hakama, verification, yes. On that you could do she'ilah, you could undo the verification. However, the hafara, you're not able to. So let's take a moment and let's look at the Ran. The Ran is on the 4th medium-sized line. That's the Mefirish. No, that's not what I wanted to see. Excuse me. My page here is a little set up backwards. Let's try to get ourselves in order. Give me one moment. Apologies. Here's the Ran. One more time. The Ran over here, is it a Ran? Yeshe'ila behekim. 1 second, scroll down a little bit. Let's get the Ran up. No, there is no Ran over here. There is no Ran over here. So let's continue back in the Gemara. Okay, so Shaila number 1, Teretz number 1, everything is nice and clear. Ba'i Rabba, continues the Gemara with the Shaila Ba'i Rabba. Kiyim lechi. 5 lines from the bottom, going to the 4th line from the bottom. If someone is Mekayim, he confirms a neder 2 times. Ma dinoi. What is the din? Which of course, again, a lot of these things are interesting. One would have thought he's just saying, as we find very often in the Hebrew language, that when you say something 2 times, it just means like very, very, ma'oid, a lot. But it's not what's going on over here. The person says, I want to be Mekayim the neder. I want to be Mekayim the neder. So what's the shayla? And then v'nishal ala kama rishayna. Then he goes and he shayel. He undoes the original hakama. What is the din in this story? Mahu. What is the din? The question obviously being, do we say that he undid the original hakama, but then the second hakama kicks in, so the neder is still verified, or not? To point out, Mefarshim here ask that what exactly is the shayla, that whatever way you're going to have a Pesach. Again, what's she'ilah, as we're mentioning today? She'ilah is you're undoing that which you did. You can't just undo it. There's no magic undo button. There's no Command Z, for those who use Mac, on your Hakama. So what does it mean you do she'ilah? It means you have a Pesach. You have a reason. You go to the Chachamim. You go to Bezdin. You tell them, I didn't know, etc., etc. So the Mishayim, the Mefarshim, the Karanayir here asks, whichever reason it's going to be a good Pesach for the first Hakama, it's a good Pesach for the second Hakama. So what exactly is the Shaila? Again, the person went and he verified the Neder. And then he verified the Neder again. And then he's like, oh shoot, there's a reason why my first verification is no good. And then the question of the Gemara is, okay, so you undid the first verification, does the second one fall in and take over the place? Ask the Karanayir, I don't understand this same Pesach. To undo the first one, we'll undo the second one, a beautiful Shaila. Let's continue. Tashema, the Gemara again has a right. Tamar Rava, 3 lines from the bottom. Im nishal rishayna, sheniya chala alav. Befir shememra of Rava, that if you undo the first one, the second one falls into place. And therefore, over here, you undo the first Hakama, but the second verification will fall into place. Ba'i Rabba, the third Shaila of the day, 2 lines from the bottom, Samachtas Samar Kim Dechi Umefer Lechi. Now here, this gets quite intriguing. Asks Rabba. Someone says a very, almost funny lashon. He says, and again, we're talking about the husband, talking about the father, who have the power to be Mekayim, to annul the vows of their children, spouses, etc. Kiyim Lechi, it's a good neder. And then he says, Umufer Lechi, and it's not a good neder. What's going on over here? Schizophrenic. It is a good neder, it's not a good neder. And then he adds on another caveat, another clause, and the akama, the verification, should not stand ela im kain chala hafara, unless the hafara stands. Mahu, what's the din? And of course, it's a very difficult shayla. And the basic gist in the Ran over here, which actually in a moment we're going to read we're going to read a little bit of the Ran in a moment. But the basic gist is that this is an impossibility. He said that the Hakama, the verification, doesn't work unless the annulment works, which of course doesn't really make any sense. Because if he annuls the vow, he can't subsequently verify it. He could verify it and then annul it, but he didn't say that. So basically the two sides of the coin are, do we assume that he wants it to be whichever way it would work, which would therefore be to be Mekayim it and then be Meifert, and then the neder would ostensibly and essentially be annulled? Or no, this is what he said, and he said it should be Akama if it's Hafara, so it's annulled, and then it's Mekuyah, which means it is nothing. That is the basic gist of this little bit of a convoluted, difficult question of Rabbah. For a moment, let's go to the very bottom of this Amid Aleph, and let's read a few lines of Ran. Chazina behach. Says the Ran, we see in this Shailu, it's difficult. So the Ran says this whole story and the way that the Mefarshim are explaining it are very difficult. And therefore, you know what? Says the Ran, I'm going to dissect this and go piece by piece. Li Rabba, according to Rabba who's asking this Shaila, Pshita le da kama lo chayla lo chayla. Says the Ran, certainly the neder is not mikuyam, as we just explained, because if you're mefer, it can't be mikuyam afterwards. Timim anavshach. Im afara chayla, akama lo chayla. Then he kama misafk lo nekaimi l'chisha, mafar l'chisha. Okay, we're going to get there. Mir Shema, we get there. But over here explains the Ran Shaloinasan Kitzvah that he did not give a set amount. He did not say when exactly he wants this to work. Pshita, it is obvious. The Afara Chayla Hakamalo Chayla. And that's not a question. V'amrit Afara Lo Chayla. And therefore, if you're going to tell me that the Afar is Nachal, the Akam is also Nachal. So one side of the coin is, do we say that certainly it's Pashit, the Akama can't be Chal. And if the Akama can't be Chal, the Afar can't be Chal, so the whole thing is meaningless? Or do we say the opposite? That's the basic gist of the Shailah. We flip over to Samachtes Amid Beis, and the Gemara again brings a proof. Ta Shema mi plukta de Rameir v'Rav Yosi. Let's bring a raya from the Machlokes in Rameir and Rav Yosi did Tinan. Harezu Tamura Asayla Tamura Shlamim. This sounds slightly familiar to many of us, as we've had similar cases quoted in the past. Says the Brisa that the Gemara is quoting Machlokes Rameir and Rav Yosi. If someone says in unique and interesting lashon, this animal should be a tamura, should be the substitute for an ayla, and it should be a substitute for a shlamim. And of course, that is a physical impossibility, because one animal cannot be an ayla and a shlamim. If it's an ayla, it's completely burnt. If it's a shlamim, the bailam eat it. But yet this person says, I want this little animal, to be a tamura, to be a substitute for an ayla and a shlamim. What is the halacha? Raise a tamura as ayla divi Rameir. Says Rameir, we go with the first thing he said, and it's an ayla. Rameir, Rav Yosi Omer says Rav Yosi, no. If this is what he originally had in mind, because it's impossible to say two things simultaneously. You can't say the word ayla and shlamim simultaneously. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu can say two things at once, as all the Aseres Dibros were said at once. Dibar ke'echaz. But human beings cannot say two things at once. Then it says Rav Yosi Devarim Kayamim. Then Rav Yosi agrees that they're going to work. Va'afilu Rameir loika amar, and even Rameir did not say his din. Deloi amar loy techel zu alim kein chala zu. Only if, says Rameir, only if he said that this one should not take effect, if this one does not take effect. Excuse me, if he doesn't say that. But here, because he says this, Rameir nami moida hafara chayla. Because of such, Rameir is also going to agree that the person does not mean that it should happen in the order that he said. That it should be a hakama. It should be a hafara and then a hakama. Incorrect. One more time. It's not the way that he said it. That's the way it does work. Right. It's not the way that he said it, that it should be a hakama and then a hafara. Because it's impossible for the hakama to take effect. Therefore, what's going to happen? The hafara is not going to take effect. And he certainly wanted something to happen. And therefore, what does he really want? He really wants a hafara. And therefore, what we say is, since there's an inherent, implicit knowledge that what does he really want? That he really wants hafara, he wants the neder to be undone. He just said it in this funny way, and that's the only way it's going to work. Therefore, even in this case, Rameir is maida. Rameir only disagrees in the case of the neder, says the Gemara. Since, says Rav Yosi, because you can't say two things simultaneously, that's the reason. But Rameir himself only says when you say two statements which inherently are contradictory, two stiras, two words which blow each other up, is only if he doesn't say Lo Amar Zu Elim Kein Chala Zu. But if he said Lo Amar Zu Elim Kein Chala Zu, like in our case, Lo Techel Hakam Elim Kein Chala Afara, he clearly is indicating his true ratzon. He's showing us what does he really want. What he really wants is for there to be something that happened. And since the only way it could work is if it's going to be a hafara, therefore says the Gemara, it's a raya that Rameir is going to agree in this case that it'll be a hafara. So again, the Tashemas from the Machlokes, Rameir and Rav Yosi, we see that in our case there is no Machlokes, that in our case he would also agree that what? That there will be hafara and the neder will be annulled. And we conclude today's share with Bayi Rabbah, 5 lines from the bottom. One last shayla. What is the story if they said it should be Kiyam Umefer, it should be Akama, confirmed, and hafara and annulled? Bevazachas. Ma'u. What is the halacha? Tashema Damar Rava. Says Rabbah. And since this is an entity that of course cannot apply zach or zab, that is impossible. Therefore, it's not going to apply b'vasachas as well, that it can't be that in order to have a afara, you need to have a hakama. Now, there's one detail which I don't know if I explained properly enough. The reason why, because I'm just remembering, one's listening and saying, wait, do a hakama and then do a afara. What's the big deal? A hakama says it's yes and neder, afara undoes it. The reason is, because what hakama means is not just it should be a neder. It's mukam, it's confirmed, it's absolute, and it's bulletproof. Once a neder is hukam, it cannot be undone. So that's the reason why once you have a kama, you can't do afara subsequently. And that's the reason why the Gemara is proving. That was the raya a moment ago that the machlekes are made of Yossi. In our case, it's not a machlekes, because he certainly wants something to happen, so it's going to have to be afara. So too over here, since it can't be bezach hazet and have to be, it will not work for asachas either. We'll pick it up from the next Shaila of Rabba B'siyat Shmaya in the next Shir.